The rain tapped softly against the window of a small apartment in the crowded city of Ashton. Inside, 26-year-old Daniel Carter sat alone at a wooden desk. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness, displaying another rejection email. "Unfortunately, we have decided to move forward with another candidate." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Another one," he whispered. He closed the email and leaned back in his chair. Around him were reminders of dreams that had never become reality. Books on entrepreneurship gathered dust on shelves. Business plans lay unfinished in drawers. Certificates from online courses hung proudly on walls, yet none had changed his life. For years, Daniel had listened to people around him. People who called themselves realistic. People who called themselves experienced. People who called themselves wise. And almost every one of them had something in common. They had already given up on their own dreams. As Daniel stared at the ceiling, memories began flooding his mind. The first voice belonged to his uncle. "Daniel, stop dreaming so big. Ordinary people like us don't become successful." The second voice belonged to a former teacher. "Be practical. Ambition only leads to disappointment." The third voice belonged to a friend. "Why try? Most businesses fail anyway." Over the years these voices became louder than Daniel's own thoughts. Every failure added another layer of doubt. Every rejection strengthened the belief that perhaps they were right. Perhaps success was only for other people. Perhaps he was meant to remain average forever. The next morning Daniel woke up feeling exhausted. Not physically, mentally. He prepared coffee and looked out the window. Thousands of people moved through the streets below. Some rushed toward offices. Some drove expensive cars. Some carried briefcases. Others looked tired and defeated. For the first time, Daniel asked himself a strange question. How many of these people have surrendered their dreams? The thought stayed with him all day. Later that evening he visited a local bookstore. The store was old and quiet. Wooden shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. The scent of paper and coffee filled the air. Daniel wandered aimlessly through the aisles until an elderly man approached him. "Looking for something specific?" the man asked. Daniel shrugged. "Maybe answers." The old man smiled. "Answers are dangerous." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous?" "Yes. Because once you find them, excuses disappear." The old man introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, the bookstore owner. They talked for nearly an hour. Eventually Daniel confessed his frustrations. "I've failed at everything." Mr. Harrison nodded calmly. "No." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean no?" "You have attempted things that failed." "That is different." Daniel remained silent. The old man continued. "Do you know the most dangerous advice in the world?" "What?" "Advice from people who surrendered." Daniel felt something shift inside him. Mr. Harrison walked toward a shelf and pulled out a notebook. The cover was worn and faded. He handed it to Daniel. "Read this." "What's inside?" "Stories." Daniel opened the notebook. The first page contained a handwritten sentence. "The opinions of defeated people create more defeated people." He stared at the words. Something about them felt painfully true. Mr. Harrison sat across from him. "Most people fail twice." Daniel looked confused. "Twice?" "Yes. First in reality, then in their minds." The bookstore became silent. Only the ticking of a wall clock could be heard. "When people fail," Mr. Harrison continued, "they often decide success is impossible. Then they spend the rest of their lives convincing others to stop trying too." Daniel remembered countless conversations. Whenever he spoke about goals, someone always explained why they would never work. Whenever he expressed ambition, someone offered reasons to quit. Whenever he imagined a better future, someone reminded him of risks. Perhaps they weren't protecting him. Perhaps they were protecting themselves. Protecting themselves from the uncomfortable truth that they had stopped trying. That night Daniel returned home with the notebook. He couldn't stop reading. Each page contained stories of dreamers who faced ridicule. Inventors who were mocked. Writers who were rejected. Entrepreneurs who were laughed at. Athletes who were underestimated. Yet all of them shared one characteristic. They ignored the voices of surrender. Near midnight Daniel found another sentence written in bold handwriting. "Never accept directions from someone who abandoned the journey." He read it repeatedly. The words struck him harder than anything he had heard in years. Suddenly his phone buzzed. It was a message from his friend Mark. "Hey, are you still working on that business idea?" Daniel stared at the screen. Before he could reply, another message arrived. "Honestly, forget it. It's probably not worth the effort." Daniel smiled. For the first time, he noticed something. Mark had never built a business. Never launched a company. Never risked anything significant. Yet he always had opinions about why others shouldn't try. Daniel typed a short response. Maybe. Or maybe it's worth more than I think. He put the phone down. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights reflected across wet streets. For the first time in months, Daniel felt hopeful. Not because he had succeeded. Not because his circumstances changed. But because he had discovered a hidden enemy. The words of failed people. And now he could finally hear them for what they truly were. Not predictions. Not facts. Not destiny. Just opinions. Opinions born from disappointment. Opinions born from fear. Opinions born from surrender. Daniel closed the notebook. Tomorrow would not magically transform his life. Challenges would remain. Failures would continue. Rejections would still come. But something inside him had awakened. A small voice. A voice that had been buried beneath years of negativity. A voice whispering, "Try again." As the clock struck midnight, Daniel looked toward the future. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of becoming someone who stopped trying. And that fear changed everything. To be continued in part 2.